The KEI Foundation was so giving that they had a pair painted for me to wear tomorrow, and they only did that for about 25 programs in the country, and we're going to auction them off and give the money back to the KEI Foundation, so it's for a great cause.
Okay. When you look at tape and you look at like last Tuesday's game, do you see anything different in the fourth quarter than you see in the second or third out of your team that you want to change?
Well, absolutely. And you see a team that slows way down and becomes hesitant in a lot of areas, and it's very obvious. So, again, we're continually working on that, and it's not a magical answer in terms of what's going on and things like that. It's just continuing to do what's gotten us to that point. Don't become hesitant. Don't start expecting something bad to happen and all those kinds of things. You have to continue to be aggressive, and you have to continue to increase your intensity and things like that. We felt TCU had a lot that they were playing for. If they lose to us, they probably lose their opportunity at an NCAA tournament bid. So there was a lot on the line for them that night. And it gets back to what are we fighting for and what are we playing for, and what you got to make it matter to you individually in that moment at a higher level. And we're working through some of those things.
Coach, how much does this team need to know all the things that needs to be fixed? Fourth quarter, those things. How bad do they just need to see a win just to get some momentum in the win column?
Well, as we all know, winning solves a lot, and a win would just be huge. It'd be monumental at this point in terms of where we're at in our season and what it could bring in terms of confidence and all those things. So a win really gets you over the hump. We know that as coaches. It's just getting to the moment in the game where they can make that happen. You can't hope it happens. You can't wish that it happens. You can't think it's going to be easy in those moments. Everybody's fighting and jockeying for something, and you've got to be in that mix. You've got to perform the same way.
What does Braxton Miller do so well? She had 22 points last time that you guys saw them there in Stillwater. What do you like about her game? How are you going to sort of adjust what you guys are doing?
Yes, well, Braxton and Vivian both, they can just flat out score. They're two of the purest shooters in the entire conference, and if they have any space at all, they rarely miss. I mean, when you even look at Vivian's numbers, like they're ridiculous and like percentage-wise in a game. Like, I mean, you're talking about someone that's shooting at times in the 60s and in the 80s. You just don't see that. So, bottom line is you cannot give them space and room. We want to make their touches hard. They are going to hit some contested shots. We know that, but we want to wear them down over the course of the game. We want to make sure that we have a lot of pressure prior to the catch on them, and that they have to really work for what they're getting and not just catch, rise up, and score easily.
As you play these teams the second time, especially Oklahoma State, what might we see a little bit different tomorrow than what we saw in Stillwater?
Well, I think for us is it wasn't one of our best offensive games in terms of movement and getting the ball to the right spot. So I'm hoping that we're a lot quicker into our actions and things of that nature. And we have to guard better. We know that those two players account for over 60% of their offensive output, and they were really the only two that hurt us at their place. So we have to really obviously have a much better emphasis on those two.
What did you like from your team besides that, or after that first quarter in Stillwater?
Well, just being on the road and it being kind of sloppy on both ends for both teams, really, and then just staying in the grind, and having a chance towards the end. I mean, this is a team that took Baylor down to the wire here less than 2 weeks ago on their home court. So we've seen different sparks with them and different bursts with them, and I think you just can't get them where they're hitting on all cylinders in terms of putting the ball in the basket. I think offensively we have some advantages in how we can score against them, and we need to really focus on that.
Besides fourth quarter play in the second round of Big 12 games, what are some of the team goals you set?
Yeah. Well, for us, we put a lot of emphasis on individual accountability in the fourth quarter in terms of not pressure and things like that, but in terms of just going hard. Let's just focus on going hard in those moments. And as we look at film and things like that, and as I just mentioned earlier, you see the hesitancy on defense too. We're not up making a play. We're not pressuring the ball. It's on both ends of the floor. We started walking the ball down the floor, and that wasn't any part of our game plan, and we didn't do that for 3 quarters. So just really focusing on what got us to that point. We're not asking for you to be somebody different. We're asking you to be consistent for the duration of the game.
It might not be showing up in wins and losses, but where has this team improved most since the beginning of the year, since you first got here?
Oh goodness, a lot of things. I think just the culture in general. Just accountability is the first thing that comes to my mind. Being accountable in workouts, being accountable in the progression of their individual skill sets, and being accountable as a person. I think that's something that stands out above all else since our arrival. And then just constantly growing their game and being accepting of that, and the coaching piece and all that, because you bring up a great point. We're not into moral victories, and we didn't come here for moral victories. But as we measure the progression and all that stuff, I mean, being in these games when we were blasted and blown out previously, that is a big step forward. And realistically, as a coach and having perspective, we do understand that. We're just hungry to go ahead and get in that win column, because they're overachieving at times, and we know that. But they deserve it because they're fighting and battling so hard.
One last thing on the slowing down, both offensively and defensively. Is that something where you might call a timeout now and say, with regard to no strategy other than, hey, I need you to play hard, we're not playing hard, or has that already been done?
We've tried that.
Yeah, okay.
Called one at 8-something in the last game. I mean, we've definitely tried that. So I think for them to understand, one of the things we did yesterday in practice was get them fatigued and then play the fourth quarter and play. We didn't even move on to Oklahoma State. We stayed on TCU to really hammer that home. We put the score up, and we're trying all those things to really, it's a toughness issue. It really is, and knowing that both teams are going to should be battling to the final seconds. You can't let up, and because you have a lead, you can't let up. It's the fourth quarter. You gotta sustain the energy and effort that you've put in for the previous 30 minutes.
You kind of mentioned the fatigue there. I mean, you can't use that as an excuse, but is it just maybe that you don't have the amount of players that you necessarily need when it's going into that?
Well, I think ideally you would like to be able to rest some kids a little bit more than what we were able to. But at the same time, and we talk about this a lot of people that win championships don't go but 6-7 deep into their bench. And that's a reality, and that's something that we're learning as well as a team. They're learning, and it's part of what we're teaching.
Kristen's talked a lot about how in the second half of conference play she's seen teams approach her differently, just really start to face her and really target her. Obviously she's shown that she can create opportunities for herself, but how do you help encourage her to find different ways to continue to be offensively effective when she is facing that type of defense?
Yeah, and we were just watching film a few minutes ago. I think just by showing her on film is one way, and then actually performing it in practice. One thing, she always gets a taller defender. She gets someone that's physical on her, but the one thing that she continues to have over them is speed, and how does she utilize that speed. So I think just understanding cuts and movements and setting up things instead of just going straight line offensively. And then defensively, we want her to be able to apply a lot more pressure on the ball handler because of her speed and the fact that she's lower to the ground, and we think she can get up in people's space and really bother them at a higher level.